I now give the floor to Her Excellency Sushma Swaraj, Minister for External Affairs of India.
Namaskar.
Good morning. Honorable President, on behalf of India and on my own behalf, I congratulate Mr. Peter Thomson on his election as President of the 71st United Nations General Assembly. Let me also take this opportunity to thank Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for his services to the United Nations, history's largest peace movement. Mr. President, a year has passed since I stood here at this hallowed podium to address the members of the international community. Since then, much has changed in the world around us, some for the better, some for the worse, and much which has been cause of great concern. There can be no better platform to ponder our actions and achievements over the last year. We must remember that we will be defined not just by our actions, but equally by our inaction. Mr. President, a number of issues have been debated in this August Assembly, like from the necessity of global partnerships in sharing new vaccines and promoting access to affordable drugs to counter antimicrobial resistance, to the need for faster implementation of the Sendai framework to mitigate the risk of natural disasters. From the challenges of ensuring well-ordered mobility of productive human resources to the necessity of adequate consultations with troop contributing countries before framing mandates for UN peacekeeping operations. But my time is limited. I would therefore focus only on some of the most pressing issues facing the international community. Mr. President, the true challenge of our time is to end the curse of harsh poverty that still lurks in so many corners of our world, to ensure that the fruits of growing prosperity reach those who need it most, to take forward the mission of gender equality and protect women where there is gender regression, and to ensure peace across boundaries, not least because there can be no prosperity without peace. Mr. President, I congratulate you for the priority you have given to the Sustainable Development Goals by making them the theme for the 71st United Nations General Assembly. I am happy that the 17 goals adopted by this Assembly are matched by the development vision of my government, which is geared towards the achievement of these same objectives in the last 2 years. Under the Swachh Bharat mission, that is Clean India campaign, more than 400,000 toilets have been constructed in more than 200,000 schools. Similarly, in gender equality, the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, Educate the Girl Child, Save the Girl Child program has become a nationwide mission. This is led by women. They are taking this movement forward. The Make in India brand is receiving international acclaim. Almost 250 million bank accounts have been opened for the poor under the Jan Dhan Yojana, the Jan Dhan scheme, the largest financial inclusion program the world has ever seen. Digital India is transforming the country. Under the Skill India initiative, a number of programs are underway to enable youth to reap the demographic dividend. These initiatives have added a new dimension to India's growth story, making it the fastest growing major economy in the world at a time of slow global growth. Mr. President, we are all aware that one-sixth of humanity lives in India. Therefore, global success in realizing sustainable development goals depends on the success achieved in India. We are committed to the wholehearted implementation of the Agenda 2030 as a national effort. We have decided to dedicate one day in each session of our Parliament for discussions only on SDGs. This will enable us to constantly monitor their progress, and this will give good results. However, in a globalized world, national efforts need to be supplemented by international cooperation for the successful implementation of the Agenda 2030. Mr. President, I am taking a second topic on climate change. Climate change is yet another serious challenge confronting us. There are enough resources on this planet to fulfill everyone's needs, but not enough to fulfill everyone's greed. For greed is limitless. In this context, Prime Minister Modi has championed a new concept, climate justice. If we respect nature, nature will respect and nurture us and future generations. But if we exploit nature mindlessly, then we must be mindful that nature will unleash its fury upon us. In different parts of the world, we have already seen nature drift towards the unnatural, from torrential rain to excessive heat, from tsunamis to storms and cloudbursts. We must curb reckless consumption and adopt lifestyles in harmony with nature. Yoga, the storehouse of India's ancient wisdom, epitomizes a sustainable lifestyle. Let me record our gratitude for the unprecedented global response to the International Day of Yoga being celebrated since the last 2 years. Mr. President, in the Paris Agreement, the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities has been acknowledged and accepted. This makes clear that while our responsibility is common, obligations are different. Developed nations must discharge their responsibility in the search for the common good with finance and technology transfer. We have launched an ambitious domestic effort to transform our energy mix to achieve 40% energy from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. The massive investments required entail a predictable and stable environment towards which we are working actively. Apart from this, our path-breaking initiative for an international solar alliance is intended to make efficient solar technology available for all. I assure this Assembly that India will continue to play a leading role in combating climate change. We have decided to submit our instrument of ratification of the Paris Agreement on October 2. This has been well thought. This is the birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, who epitomized a lifestyle with the smallest carbon footprint. Mr. President, let me now turn to a subject of the most critical importance, one which deeply concerns every member of this Assembly. This month, we mark the 15th anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks of this city. Tragically, less than 15 days ago, another attempt at killing innocents was made through an act of terror in this same city. We, who have suffered in Uri recently, understand the pain inflicted by the same forces. The world has been battling this scourge for long. However, despite the blood and tears of innocent victims, attacks this year alone in Kabul and Dhaka, Istanbul and Mogadishu, Brussels and Bangkok, Paris, Pathankot and Uri, as well as daily barbaric tragedies in Syria and Iraq, remind us that these malevolent forces are yet to be defeated. We must acknowledge that terrorism is undoubtedly the biggest violation of human rights. This is the first thing, we should accept this. Terrorism is undoubtedly the biggest violation of human rights. It targets the innocent and kills indiscriminately. Terrorism has way beyond affecting individuals or nations, it is a crime against humanity itself. But it is important to ask, who is behind this and who benefits from it? Terrorists do not own banks or weapons factories. So let us ask the question, who finances these terrorists? Who arms them? And who provides sanctuaries? We heard similar questions being asked by Afghanistan from this podium. Mr. President, history proves that those who seed extremist ideologies reap a bitter harvest. These small terrorist groups. The germ of evil has grown into a hydra-headed monster backed by technological sophistication that threatens the peace and harmony of our world. We will not be able to win against terrorism by making specious distinctions between your problems and mine, between terrorists who attack you and those who attack me. For we do not know whose Frankenstein monster this monster will devour next. Therefore, if we want to defeat terrorism, there is only one way, that we unite across our differences, add steel to our resolve, and inject urgency in our response. We need to forget our prejudices and join together, hands together, to script an effective strategy against terror. This is not an impossible task, Mr. President, provided we have the will. We can do it. We must do this. Otherwise, our future generations will forever hold us to account. And yes, if any nation refuses to join this global strategy, then we must isolate it. And if any nation refuses to join this global strategy, then I demand, then we must isolate it. In our midst, there are nations that still speak the language of terrorism, that nurture it, peddle it, and export it. To shelter terrorists has become the calling card of these nations. We must identify these nations and hold them to account. These nations, in which UN designated terrorists roam freely, lead processions, and deliver their poisonous sermons of hate with impunity, are as culpable as the very terrorists they harbor. Such countries should have no place in the Committee of Nations. Mr. President, on 21st September, the Prime Minister of Pakistan used this podium to make baseless allegations against human rights violations in my country. I can only say that those accusing others of human rights violations would do well to introspect and see what egregious abuses they are perpetrating in their own country, including in Balochistan. What is happening there? The brutality against the Baloch people represents the worst form of state oppression. And the second thing what was said, the Prime Minister of Pakistan also said that India has placed preconditions for talks which are not acceptable to him. What preconditions? Did we impose any precondition before extending an invitation for the oath-taking ceremony of our government? Did we impose any precondition? And did we impose any precondition when I went to Islamabad for the Heart of Asia conference and agreed to begin the comprehensive bilateral dialogue? Did we pose any condition? Did we impose any precondition when Prime Minister Modi travelled from Kabul to Lahore? What preconditions? What are we talking about? We took the initiative to resolve issues not on the basis of conditions, but on the basis of friendship. This is the truth. We have in fact attempted a paradigm of friendship in the last 2 years, which is without precedent. We conveyed Eid greetings to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, wished success to his cricket team, extended good wishes for his health and well-being. This was never before. Did all this come with preconditions? And what did we get in return? Pathankot, Bahadur Ali and Uri? I want to ask, are we putting conditions or are you going in a different direction? Bahadur Ali is a terrorist in our custody, a living proof that a terrorist has come from across the borders. But when confronted with such evidence, Pakistan remains in denial. It persists in the belief that such attacks will enable it to obtain the territory it covets. My firm advice to Pakistan is abandon this dream. Let me state unequivocally that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India and will always remain so. Therefore, Pakistan should not and should abandon this dream. As I said at the very beginning, we will be judged by our action and equally by our inaction. What goals have we achieved and what objectives we have revealed? The first is the Comprehensive Convention on Interterrorism, which was proposed by India in 1996. After 2 decades, in 2016, we are yet to come to a conclusion. As a result, we are unable to develop a norm under which terrorists shall be prosecuted or extradited. Therefore, it is my appeal that this General Assembly acts with fresh resolve and urgency to adopt this critical convention. Secondly, just as we need a more contemporary approach to combating terrorism, we also need a less outdated Security Council that continues to reflect the world order of an earlier era. The vast majority of nations share the belief that the United Nations should not remain frozen in 1945 just to serve the interests of a few. Whether it is institutions or issues, we must come to terms with present-day realities and the challenges that confront us. An expansion in the permanent and non-permanent membership of the Council to reflect contemporary realities is therefore an urgent necessity. We must move forward substantively through the intergovernmental negotiations towards text-based negotiations. If both these long-pending issues are addressed during your presidency, the success of this session will be ensured. Mr. President, the 21st century has begun in the shadow of turmoil. But we can turn this into a golden age in the history of civilization through united and concerted efforts. But what happens tomorrow will depend on what we do today. Thank you.
Minister for External Affairs of India for her statement. I now give the floor to His Excellency Vivian Balakrishnan, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Singapore.